SiniCon consoles present the SCE24 MIDI Controller. Welcome to the introductory video of the SiniCon E24. In this video, we will be covering the following topics: an introduction to the SCE24 controller by the Inventor, a description of the controller's features, a description of the back connections, a quick description of CSI and what it is, initializing the SCE24 controller, initializing Reaper, and loading a project onto the SCE24 controller, demoing the top row of encoders, controlling sense volume and sense pan, demoing the bottom row of encoders, controlling tracks volume, pan, mute, solo, and record arm, demoing the OLED buttons, demoing the LED buttons, demoing the ring, LED lights, demoing the encoder indicator lights, demoing the encoder OLED display and one of its display types, including the use of the encoders for adjusting volume and pan, as well as controlling the volume and pan of a track's sends, demoing the middle row which is currently mapped to the FX menu, demoing an audio FX being mapped onto the entire controller, discuss the configuration files and the future of them, discuss the ability to combine multiple controllers and other modules. Let's get started.
Hi everyone, this is Sinibaldi with the SiniCon E24 controller. The SiniCon E24 controller is a MIDI device that can control your audio workstation through MIDI, obviously, and it has 24 encoders. Each encoder is touch sensitive and a push button. Each encoder also has an OLED display below it that can give you information of what the input is doing, or the encoder is doing. And around the encoder, there's a 15 LED light indicator, and below it is a overall indicator light as well. So the ring LED could be used for metering or to display parameter values, and the indicator could be used to display something else, as for example, if you're controlling reverbs, the indicator could all be red. If you're controlling compressors, the indicators could be blue. But the beauty of the controller is that you can customize it however you want. Below the encoders are 8 OLED buttons, which means that every single one of these buttons has an OLED display above it, and below it has 8 LED buttons. So all the displays on the controller, except for the top 2 main displays, are full RGB color, which is something that you normally can't find in a controller. But we took our time to be able to select the proper components to be able to provide that to the users, because we felt it was very important to be able to control the colors, because they give you cues about what the controller is doing, and because the controller can be customized. Every single thing can be customized about it in whichever way you want. Then the color, having different colors, will be very important as to telling the user what is controlling. On top of all the encoders, the back of the controller has 2 1/4-inch jacks for foot pedals, and those will be basically 2 extra buttons that you can be controlling with your feet. It has a USB-B connector, which is a very sturdy connector. We wanted to make sure that the controller wouldn't be disconnecting from you while you're using it. It has a micro SD card to be able to update the firmware. It has a network jack, RJ45. For future use, we want to be able to control the unit through a networking cable. It has a power jack and an on-off switch. But rather than talk about the controller, we want to go into our mix room and connect it and be able to show you everything that this controller can do, how customizable it is in Reaper through the CSI project, which was created by Jeff Waddington of Canada. And in order to do that, let's go to the studio. We want to thank you for being here and your interest in the controller. We also want to thank Jeff Waddington, of course, for creating CSI, which is the software that lets this controller communicate with Reaper, and also FunkyBot, who has helped us with some of the customization files to be able to link up to Reaper and this controller. Fair warning, this is going to be a very long video, but fear not. Below it in the description, we will have links to different segments of the video, so you don't have to watch the entire thing. You can just focus on the subjects that you're interested in. Again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for the interest on the controller. We're going to start selling the unit this week, and we'll be contacting all the people who submitted into the waiting list, and we'll be sending emails to them. Again, thank you so much. We look forward to getting these things out in the wild and having people review them and use them, and hopefully they'll be able to use the controller to create music or anything dealing with audio. So we appreciate your support. Let's go to the studio. Hey everyone, we're back in the studio in the control room, and we have our controller plugged in, and we are about to start Reaper. Let's turn on the controller so you can see that in the control initialize, you see it go through some screens. You see all the buttons light up at the bottom. You see the OLED buttons also show their screen light up. And you see all the OLED screens below the encoders with default screen. And also you were able to see the rings light up. And then the top two displays are also showing you the version, currently the version of the controller, and then the name of the controller over there. We'll be able to control that with our settings later, but for now, let's start Reaper so we can see what happens when we load up a project. One thing to keep in mind is that we currently have a certain setting that will load when a Reaper project loads, but this is just the way we've customized it now. That doesn't mean that it has to be this way all the time. You can, delegate this controller to just do audio effects, or the way we have it set up now, we're able to adjust the volume on the bottom row, adjust the effects on the middle row, and adjust the sends on the top row. So let's just load up Reaper and take a look at what we have so far. And again, keep in mind, this is just one way to do it. So you'll see that the top row is showing sends. If I select track number 8, you'll see that track number 8 has 8 different sends, and you'll see that it says send to track 9, track 10, track 11, track 12, 13, all the way up to 16. And if I select track number 7 we're using the OLED buttons to select tracks, that would clear all the screens on the top because track 7 doesn't have any sends. If I go back to track 8, you'll see that now all the displays refreshed. Another thing you'll see is that our bottom row is showing the volume at the bottom, the pan of the track, and then the track name, and above it there is a bar item, and the bar item is a meter basically showing you the volume of the track. So if I were to press play, which is this button, again, this is the way we programmed it. This play button could be anywhere in the controller, but we have it set up to here. And this is the stop button. So if I press play, you'll see that if I take my dim of my monitor controller, you can start hearing the music. And let me dim that so you can hear me and not the music. If you see that track 1 has a negative 4.19 volume. If I were to press it, that's going to get cleared and go back to Unity because I programmed that to happen when I press the button. The same thing with track 2, track 3, track 4, and so on. So now they're all at 0. If I press stop, it'll stop. If I go through my track selection, it'll select all the tracks. I'm not sure if you can read it on the screen, but basically these OLED buttons are saying select, so it lets you know that this button would select the track. Then below it, it says mute, and below it says solo, and below it says record. And what I have that set up for is to remind me of what happens when I press this button. It selects the track. The The following one is mute. So if I hold down control and press this, the track will mute, and you'll see that here on the screen. If I press control again and press the button, you'll see that it'll unmute. The next one, it says solo. So if I press alt and press this button, it'll solo that track. If I press it down and press this, it'll unsolo the track. And again, you could always latch these modifiers, which are the control, alt, shift, and option. You can just tap them, and if you tap them very quickly, they latch. So now I could solo on these, because I have the alt, which is the second one, and then the second item is solo. And I can remove the solos again. And then the following one is record arm, really. So if I latch the shift, then I can record arm these different tracks, and I can take that off as well. So if I press play, you'll see the metering going around the rings. You'll see the bars also doing metering duty, just because I have it set up this way. Obviously, it's redundant to have it on both items, but it's just to show the functionality. Another thing you can see if I press stop, or actually if I go to a different track, if I press play, you'll see that the bars are, let me raise the volume here so you can see that the bar goes from green, and it turns into yellow, and then at the top it turns into red. And also you'll see the ring LED go from blue to yellow, and at the top will turn into red. And again, this is customizable in the controller. You can tell it to do the first 50% be green, then the next 25% be yellow, and then the last 25% be red. Or you can do the last 5% be red. You can change the color of the bars, both on the screen and also the metering on the ring LEDs, as you want it. So whatever color you want to use, you can use. You're not stuck to the defaults, which is something that's very powerful. Also, right now the bottom LEDs are this magenta color, or fuchsia, or pink, whatever you want to call it, and that's set up on the zone file, which is the configuration file. You could make them be green or blue or yellow or orange, which is up to you what makes the most sense to you. So the bottom row, the bottom row is showing the top is the bar of the volume, the meter. The second item is the track name. The next item is the pan of the track, and the bottom value is the volume. So you can control the volume with the encoder. You can press it to go back to unity. You can lower it and press it and go back to unity. If I hold down the option and use the encoder, now I'm affecting the pan of the track. And if I press it down, it goes back to center. I could also latch this modifier, and now I can affect all the panning of all my tracks. I can center them back again, and that works really well. And I can take out the latch before I forget. The second row is telling you the effects on the track. We'll get back to that. And then the top row is giving you the sense. So for example, right now I have track 8 selected, and you'll see that track 8 is sending to track 9, to track 10, to track 11, track 12, track 13, 14, 15, and 16. And now this is controlling the volume of the send. And again, if I press it, it'll go back to 0. And if I latch my option button, now I'm controlling the panning of the send. And again, if I press it, I go back to 0. So that works really well. Let's take out that before I forget. Now let's go back to the effects menu, which is set up on the second row. If I go to, let's say, track number 2 here on Reaper, and I add some effects, let's say I do real gate, I'll add some reverb, and then I'll add some Ria voice and Ria X comp. So I have 4 effects here. So if I were to go to track number 2, you'll see that it's saying no map, no map, no map, no map 4 times because I have 4 effects there. Now it's saying no map because I don't have a configuration file for these effects specifically. So it can't find them. Now, if I were to, for example, let's go to a different track that doesn't have any effects, that clears. If I were to add Ria comp, which I do have a configuration file, and now I were to go back to track number 2, you'll see that Ria comp is being shown here, and you'll see that this is no map, no map, no map. Now, one of the things that's happening right now is the entire controller is changing to the blue background, which is the way that Ria comp is set up. So it's auto-loading the backgrounds of Ria comp, not necessarily the parameters of Ria comp. And this is a CSI issue which we're working on with Jeff. That, again, the controller is not being affected. It's just what CSI is sending to it, but that's going to get fixed the second that I'm able to get a unit to Jeff, the creator of CSI. So now if you have all these effects and you do have a effect file configured, you're able to press down, and now this loads up the parameters that I have configured so far. So if you look at this, I'm able to control the threshold, and if you see on the screen, you'll see that the threshold is being controlled. Also, if I move it with my mouse, it moves it on the screen. If I want to move the next one, which is the pre-comp, that's also being affected, the attack, the release. And I also have these two toggle between 5,000 and 0. This one toggles from 500 to 0. This one toggles from 250 to 0. This one toggles from 0 to -30. But again, I set that up myself. I could make it toggle from 0 to -infinity or 0 to -10. So if I'm always using -10 on my thresholding, I can set that up and it'll always go to it when I press it. At least it could be a starting point. And all these can be the ratio. You can affect the ratio, the knee, the wet, the dry, and these are the wet and the dry on the plugin. And down here I have the wet and the bypass on the Reaper section. So this is bypass normal, and you see how this is changing, or if I press it bypass normal, or if I turn, I can go from bypass normal. And then this is the wet on here, which again is the Reaper wet function. Sometimes some effects don't have a wet command or parameter, but you could always use the Reaper, which is basically like the house wet command on an effect. And I can go from 0 to 100 by doing that. So this is very powerful. We're going to stop the demo right now, and we will be bringing you more demos with more configuration settings. But for now, this is the first configuration file that we've created. We're going to be creating a lot more configuration files, and we're also going to be creating configuration files for effects. Currently, CSI and some of the users have over 400 effects already mapped to their controllers. We'll be using some as starting points, some of those as starting points to be able to have those 400 or 600 or 800 effects, whatever they have, into our controller. So when the unit ships, you'll be able to have all those configuration files already provided for you, and mapped in a logical way on the controller, obviously you'll be able to remap your controller in whichever way you want. So if you don't use the ratio on a compressor ever, then you can just not even have it on your controller. And the flexibility of this setup is just incredible. You'll also be in the future be able to combine controllers, where you can have two controllers here, two controllers there. Then we're also creating a fader unit. That's the next order of business here. So you can have a fader unit below this one. And then we'll also have a transport unit for panning, for jog wheel and zooming and extra customizable buttons. So we're very excited about releasing this unit and releasing the next modules, which will also happen. A lot of the next modules will have very similar controls that we have here. So the bulk of the work is done. It's just a matter of finding the right components to have the most quality components that we can afford and put into this unit. But in any case, thank you so much for your interest. Like I said in my previous video, we will be starting sales this week. We're going to be emailing everybody on the waiting list. We can't wait for to have customers using this unit and telling us how to improve it. We'll obviously always listen to our customers, and we're always trying to improve and make the best decisions possible on the controllers. So please send us an email if you have any questions. I'll have my email address on the description below. And again, also you can go to different parts of the video based on the description links below. And I'll be making more videos where you'll be able to see some of the other screens that we already have set up for this. We currently have 8 different types of screens. And what I mean by that is there'll be a screen with 4 lines of text. There's a screen with 5 lines of text. There's a screen where certain text is bigger because it's meant to show something more prominent. Then there are also screens where it has radio buttons. So if you're mapping a parameter on an effect that just has a couple of radio buttons or checkboxes, you'll be able to do that. And you'll be able to customize the screens however you want, whether it's the background color, the text color, the type of screen that you're using, the metering, and so on. So again, thank you so much. We're bringing more videos out shortly. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you. Bye.